Can you please tell the camera your first and last name and please spell them?
Spell my name? For sure. Hi, my name's Ella Pauls. That's Ellapauls.
What are your preferred pronouns?
She, her. I did go by she, they for a time, but she, her's good with me.
Do we have permission to use this footage for our documentary?
Absolutely.
So, what was your life like pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, it was good. So grade 9 was kind of pre-COVID for me. It was mainly adjusting to high school. I had a really tight-knit group in grade 8, and it was more the fear of like, oh, how am I going to adjust to high school, stuff like that. So it was good. It was a time of change for me, and it was just, I wouldn't say starting to settle into high school, but I was like just starting to feel comfortable. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say like a solid 7, I think.
When did you hear about the coronavirus?
Originally from my dad. Funny story, we finished watching, it was this, I think it was the movie Contagion, which was like a really bad start, because like we finished watching it and then my dad was like, haha, funny story, that's actually happening right now. And I was like, oh. And then through there, it just kind of progressed and I started to hear, more and more about it, progressing into more January, which was then my birthday. So I was like, happy birthday, coronavirus. And then, March hit, and then it was like, we were fully knee-deep in it. So I was keeping myself kind of fully updated, because I like to be on top of the news. I like to kind of immerse myself in what's happening and stay educated.
Well, what did you think about it when you first heard about it?
My first thought was the Black Plague, because I'm a little bit of a history nut. I was trying to kind of wrap my head around, what is this, how is it affecting us, what scale is this going to affect us on? And I don't think I fully realized how it would impact us on a whole. So I was kind of not fully prepared for what it blew up to be, I'd say. Yeah.
So would you say, what would you say your reaction would be to like school shutting down?
School shutting down initially, I was like, yeah, March break and 2 weeks off school, because I am a high school student. Sometimes I don't like school. And then through that, I was pretty comfortable. School adjusting to online was mid, but I was fully in for it the first 2 weeks plus March break.
Yeah, I think I was with you when we both first.
Yeah.
How did your daily schedule change?
From day to day, it was, so we had that there was that huge gap there where there was no school at first, and that was just, me living my best life, waking up at 11:30, not doing anything, sleeping a while, gaming, going back to bed at a really late time, as every teenager does. Once school kind of picked up again, there were a few teachers who did try to implement a schedule, which was really nice, I'd say. They do from this time to this time, we're working on this, and then you get a 10-minute break to run around your house, do laps or whatever. So it was nice to have that implemented school schedule, but just from the time that we were actually, no school was happening, there was no schedule. It was just exist, and that was it.
So do you think that school schedule stood out to you? Do you think, and when you came back to school, do you think, what schedule stood out to you? The cohorts, did any not work?
We had so many cohorts that honestly it's so hard to keep track of what came first and what stuck and what didn't. I like the way that school is set up now, I will say, but for a time when we did have that 2 classes per day, I think that really helped me personally. I don't know about a whole lot of other students, but I had my attention span shortened significantly, and having a full, whatever it was, 2.5 hours for class, the first half of the day on one class, that was really beneficial to me, for whichever cohort that was. I can't remember what the other 7 were. We had too many.
Would you say your grades were impacted?
No, that's the one thing that didn't actually switch up much incidentally. I'm not to brag, but I'm very strong academically. My classes were kind of, all of the more academic ones did kind of exist in person in those few days that we did have in-person learning, and the online ones were more like, guitar, comm tech, stuff like that, that wasn't as beneficial to my grade. So stuff dipped maybe a tiny bit, but not nearly as much as I know it has for some people, I know for sure.
How do you think the teachers handled it?
I think they did a great job for what they could. I know that it was really hard sometimes, just trying to prepare and shift your content from in-class learning to online. Some of my teachers did that really well, and I know it was really hard for like, how do you do guitar online? Like, it's really hard to adapt. But I think, and this is a call out to the student body could have been a little bit better and could have been a little bit more attentive for how much work the teachers were putting into that. There was a little bit, I shouldn't say disrespect, but they could have done a little bit better there.
How did you feel about the do no harm policy that got implemented during the academic portion of your year?
I didn't pay much attention to that, I will say, because I didn't, like my grades didn't really fall. Like I know that it was like something, what was it, like 75% or whatever, it couldn't fall underneath. I think it really benefited some students, but we have so much sugarcoating now that I think now students in grade 12 are going to struggle a lot, especially with exam season coming up. So it cushioned us in one way, but it set us up for failure in another way. So it's got its pros and cons to it for sure.
Did you stay in contact with friends during lockdown?
I tried to. I'm a very introverted person, so I mostly kept to myself during COVID and then like a few small group of friends. But, if we did meet up, it was, we're all 12 feet apart, we're all wearing masks, we're doing whatever. But I was happy to exist by myself, which did come back to punch me in the gut later on. But, I kept in contact, which is, I think, the best thing that I did.
How did COVID impact your social life?
A lot. Like I said, I mainly kept to myself, and thus doing so, when we came back in person, my social battery was just non-existent. So I had to kind of slowly rebuild myself back up. It's like, okay, this is how much time I can spend doing things with these people, this is how I can like push myself to do this. I gotta phrase my time like this. I can meet these people, but in the evenings, I'd be totally wiped. So COVID was a good time for me personally to kind of work on myself, but like the social aspect kind of came back to slap me.
Would you say that emotional drain battery, as you put it, affected any of your relationships?
I mean, if it has, the people haven't told me. I've kind of kept with, or at least that COVID friend group I've kind of kept with them since we were like grade 5, grade 6. So we're all pretty tight in that same manner. So we're all still pretty tight now. So I think we're all around good on that side.
So isolation didn't really affect you that much?
No, I just kind of sat there. I kind of vibed. I got my books, I got my TV, I got my cats, I got my dog. I got my phone. Yeah, no.
Did you do anything to cope?
Coping was not really something that I went to that I thought of. No, I keep hearing of like, I have a really close friend who is like ultimate, they're, what's the opposite of? They're a people person. And so they're like clawing out the walls, like, let me see people and whatnot. And so the moment that, cruises and stuff that came out, they were always like their cruise person. They were like booking up all these cruises and going on vacations, whatever. And I know that they really struggled, but we were just happy to like sit at home. I know it kind of sounds bad, but it didn't overly affect us in that bad kind of manner, kind of way.
Like you said, there was a lot of lack of communication, or a lot of miscommunication, right? How did you determine what sources you were going to trust when you were getting all this conflicting information?
Yeah, so we mostly turned to Teresa Tam because she was kind of the head of everything, and then and I mean, you can determine this however you want, but my aunt works at a hospital in Markham, and so she's a speech pathologist, so she mainly works with a lot of COVID patients. So she was like that first kind of wave of like those frontline workers, and so she couldn't give us like direct information, but she was like, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and we were like, okay, we're just going to take your word for it because if your information is kind of lining up with Teresa Tam and whatever, then we're going to go for it. So a lot of that, and then a lot of like we were taking Doug Ford's and Lecce's stuff with kind of a grain of salt because there was a lot of kind of in and out stuff about that, especially with cohorts with the school board. So if it was government approved and if it was kind of Teresa Tam approved, we kind of put that stamp of approval on it, and we were like, okay, we can mainly trust this. No third party, no weird sketchy articles, no Mayo Clinic, and from there we were like, okay, we can probably trust this.
How do you think COVID is over, per se?
I wouldn't say it's over. I haven't heard anything about variants for a while, but I know that at least for students, our next dose is coming up soon. So if they're still putting out doses, that means that COVID is still, there's a risk out there, right? So honestly, I'm still expecting there to be some milder cases of variants, and I think COVID is just going to become something like a flu now. It's just going to be something underlying and minimal, but it's not going to become anything like what it was, early 2020s. So nothing on that scale of like what it was before, but I think it's definitely going to continue to be a part of our everyday lives.
What mistakes do you think there was in handling COVID?
Everything that they did with the school board, everything with cohorts. I know that there was all trial and error, but like there were 3 different trials of cohorts for a while. There were a lot of things with different mask mandates. There were a lot of incidents that, I can't really put my finger on now, but I think that they could have, I wouldn't say done better, but just kind of rethought out and then retry it out again. I've just kind of pushed those all under the rug now because I honestly can't place them, but COVID in general, I think we could have redone better on total.
Anything we did well?
I think how we reacted, okay, maybe not reacted, but how, like, at such a rapid pace of how we reacted to it. Like the pace that masks went out, the pace that, we got students out of schools. I'm not sure what the death count was for Canada early on, but, we have really good healthcare systems and stuff like that. So we had a good reaction at first, even if, like, the hospitals were flooded and we had that initial wave and whatnot. The initial reactions and the speed of it was really good, I think.
What, what do you think changed about yourself during COVID?
I think maybe my confidence. Grade 9, like I said, was like a time for me. I was like, okay, well, I'm moving out of a school where I've had the same classmates for, 5 years. I need to find new people. I need to make new friends. I need to immerse myself in new groups. And, I wasn't really able to do that through COVID since we were online. But, coming back briefly in grade 10 and then grade 11 gave me that, redo button on total, right? That kind of gave me a redo start on, all of my interests and whatnot. Grade 9, I was fully immersed in our art program at Beale. In grade 11, I was like, nope, scratch that. Not really what I want to do, trying something new entirely. So it kind of gave me a relook at what my interests are, what I'm really passionate in, and who kind of I am. So I think that was a really good look in at myself. I'm not sure who I would kind of be if we didn't have COVID.
Would you say you're happy with yourself, the way you are?
Right now, yeah. With COVID, yeah, I think so, yeah.
How does it feel to be back in school as a senior?
It's terrifying. Good to be back. Terrifying to be a senior. It's so weird seeing grade 9s run around the school and have like their grade 9 life that I could have had. I'm a little bit jealous, yeah, but it's really nice to be back in person fully. Like, I know that COVID is still a lasting thing, but it fully doesn't feel like it's affecting Beale anymore. Like, the pool is opening up now, sports teams are fully back in swing, clubs are back up, you know. We've really shifted to a stage where we're almost fully back to normal, and I think that's really nice as a senior, where you get to experience that one last year as it's supposed to be.
How prepared do you feel, and how prepared do you feel your peers are to exit high school and enter into post-secondary?
Not at all. The amount of people that I know that have come back for grade 13 just kind of even proves my point. I personally am not going to come back for grade 13, but you know, there's a lack of, we don't know how to do exams yet right now. There's a lack of, you know, especially in this generation, I find that kids don't know how to cook for themselves. They don't know how to do their own chores, how to do their own laundry. There's just a general sense of unpreparedness that's not even academic based. And COVID really put a damper on that as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of kids, even in that kind of lost few years of COVID, that will be coming back for that academic year, whether that's grade 13 or taking a gap year. That are just because they're so unprepared or they don't feel ready quite yet to leave home and move on to university or college or post-secondary, whatever they want to go.
So what are your hopes for the future?
My hopes are to not get COVID. That's my main hope. I've had like four close encounters actually, and I haven't gotten it yet. So that's my main big hope. But honestly, just right now, my current hope is trying to get into a good university or college. I'm trying to think immediate future.
What are your thoughts on the restrictions being lifted?
So, like, honestly, all now, I believe they're all good, they're all fine. I'm really glad that we're kind of returning to their sense of normalcy. But each in their own time, I think there was each a little bit of conflict. Like, for a while, there was that whole thing about, you know, staying in your bubble, that group of people. And then 6 months afterwards, there was that lack of communication where like, oh, those bubbles don't exist anymore. So there was really that, there was so much communication going out and so much communication going back in that was like, what's being lifted, what's going back down. It just kind of, it got repeated so much that I just kind of, I had my mask on me all times anyway. I only really stopped wearing it this school year because, you know, I have all of the boosters, my parents have all of the boosters, and I feel safe enough to do so. But lockdown lifted, I was a little bit scared because my social battery, that was like, oh yay, time to go and meet people again. Mask mandates. The first time I was a little bit scared once again, but now that we've kind of gotten into that, it's less scary now and so. But I feel like they could have done a better job with that kind of lack of communication when they started to lift those things in the first place.
What are your thoughts on people who say that, who think that COVID is fake or false?
Honestly, I encourage them to kind of take a look at some more trusted resources. I'm kind of interested to, you know, hear their reasoning, hear their backing, hear their science behind it. Because, you know, we've heard a lot about that. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy, you know, a lot of anti-vaxxer, a lot of, you know, community, especially in London and stuff like that, right? But just like, what are your sources? What's the science behind it? Kind of maybe rethink your choices and then, you know, come back to the conversation.
How did you feel during the lockdown?
Honestly, I was thriving. I was watching video games, I was doing board games with my families, we were doing a lot of hikes and stuff like that. Still keeping it no contact. Obviously, like a lack of being able to meet family and whatnot is really wasn't great for us, but I shouldn't say that we're not a family-oriented family, but, you know, we do holidays and that was about it, so we weren't like, you know, dying at the lack of family gatherings and whatnot. So in our household, it was like obviously sucks. We can't go out and we can't meet people, but we were doing well since we're all just a bunch of introverts. So we were doing well within our own little pocket and within our own little bubble.
What do you think will happen in the near future with COVID?
COVID is a part of our everyday lives now, like I said before. Like the way that we have plexiglass screens now, just kind of the way that we've kind of changed our environment. So it's kind of shifted how we do things on an everyday basis on a whole, I think now. Especially with it kind of now underlying being, it'll be one of those flu shots forever, I think.
How has COVID altered your view of the future?
Oh, I don't like thinking about the future. That kind of scares me.
So these line of questions are all about the future, so.
Yeah. Thinking about the future in grade 9 was more like, okay, thinking about grade 9, grade 10, 11, grade 12, and now it's like, okay, well, I'm in grade 12, applying for university, applying for college, what's the future going to be like? So COVID has kind of distorted my sense of reality because I can't remember anything in those COVID years because they've all kind of been smushed together. So on a whole, COVID's just kind of warped my sense of time.
What's something you learned from this experience that you want everybody to know?
I think we have a lot more time than we realize, and you should connect with people. Even if it's someone that you haven't, contacted in like 2-3 years, reach out, say hi. Doesn't have to be a full-blown conversation. Just keep things linked. Don't leave things for 2-3 years. Don't, kind of isolate people. Just keep in contact. Make sure you have a good, sturdy someone to rely and count on at all times.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sweet.